Welcome to Jazz Piano Skills. I'm Dr. Bob Lawrence. It's time to discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Hard to believe, right? Here we are, week 3 of our 3-week exploration of the jazz standard, There Is No Greater Love. These weeks, these months fly by. It's crazy. I know it. Week 1, 2 weeks ago, we took a deep dive into the harmonic foundation of the tune, followed by last week's dissecting of the melody, to be followed up today with a challenging look at various ways to use There Is No Greater Love to help us develop our improvisational skills. Right? It's a great 3-tier approach, right? Harmony, melody, improvisation. It works. It's how I approach studying tunes, and it's a process that once you get familiar with it, it gets easier and easier, at least I hope so, each and every month. The other thing that this process does is it quickly reveals our strengths and weaknesses regarding the various essential jazz piano skills. And how important is it that we actually truly know our strengths and truly know our weaknesses? The bottom line is that there's no way, absolutely no way to improve our playing without having an accurate understanding and assessment of our playing. And the last couple podcast episode lessons and today's lesson do exactly that. They give us a very accurate report card, as I like to say. We know pretty quickly where we stand with our ability to play critical jazz piano skills. I made a point to mention several times since the start of the year that there is a sequential order to learn how to play jazz piano, which really shouldn't surprise you, right? I mean, after all, I cannot think of one high-level skill that you can successfully develop without having a strategic game plan. And I can confidently guarantee you that a scattershot approach, or what I like to call a YouTube approach, to trying to learn how to play jazz piano will only cause frustration, confusion, and ultimately giving up. This happens so many times. So my goal from day one with jazz piano skills has been to not only introduce you to the essential jazz piano skills, discover, but to also provide you with a way to successfully study the skills, learn, and a process for developing a physical command of the skills. Play. Discover, learn, play. Now, I also mentioned several times since the start of the new year that if you have been a faithful jazz piano skills listener for the past 4+ years, you have indeed become intimately familiar with the jazz piano skills needed to successfully begin tune study. And I've also mentioned that if you haven't been grinding along with us over the past 4+ years, well, it's no big deal. No worries. It's a great time to jump on board and begin developing and enhancing your jazz piano skills. In fact, the tune study that we are going to be doing every month will help you actually sift through and prioritize the last 4 years of podcast episodes so that you can begin to maximize your jazz piano skills right now, immediately. So if you are a jazz piano skills veteran or a jazz piano skills rookie, it makes no difference. You're in the right place at the right time to begin a jazz piano journey that will have a very profound impact on your understanding of music and, of course, on your jazz piano playing. So today you are going to discover an improvisation approach for There Is No Greater Love. And you're going to learn about improvisational zones and patterns and motifs for There Is No Greater Love. And you're going to play a solo through the changes of There Is No Greater Love using melodic boundaries, what I like to call melodic boundaries, and extended boundaries. So as I always like to say, regardless of where you are in your jazz journey, a beginner, an intermediate player, an advanced player, or even if you're a seasoned and experienced professional, you're going to find this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson exploring There Is No Greater Love to be very beneficial. But before we get started, I want to, as I always do, welcome first-time listeners to Jazz Piano Skills. And if you are a new listener to the Jazz Piano Skills podcast, or if you're just new to Jazz Piano Skills, welcome. And I want to invite you to become a Jazz Piano Skills member. Your membership will grant you access to the premium content for this podcast episode and every weekly podcast episode, past, current, and future. Right now, the premium content will help you thoroughly and correctly discover, learn, and play the jazz standard that we are currently exploring, and a whole lot more. For example, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, you have access to the past, current, and future educational weekly podcast packets. These are the illustrations, the lead sheets, the play-alongs, or the backing tracks that I develop and design for every weekly podcast episode to help you get the most out of every weekly Jazz Piano Skills podcast episode. Now, you will also have access to a self-paced and sequential jazz piano curriculum, which is loaded with comprehensive courses containing educational talks, interactive learning media. There are video demonstrations of the jazz piano skills in all 12 keys, and so much more. You'll also have what I like to say is a reserved seat in my online weekly masterclass, which is held every Thursday evening. Now, if you can't make Thursday evening, it's no big deal, right? Masterclasses are recorded, so you can watch the video and rewatch the video whenever and as often as you wish. As a Jazz Piano Skills member, you also have access to an online interactive fake book containing must-know jazz standards, all of them with excellent chord changes, chord scale relationships, harmonic function analysis, listening suggestions, and historical insights. And as a Jazz Piano Skills member, check this out, you can make some new friends, visit with some old friends in the online private Jazz Piano Skills community, which hosts a variety of engaging forums. And last but not least, you as a Jazz Piano Skills member have access to unlimited private, personal, and professional educational support whenever and as often as you need it. So all of these amazing privileges are waiting to help you discover, learn, and play jazz piano. So check it all out at jazzpianoskills.com. And of course, become a member to enjoy premium podcast content. Of course, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm always happy to spend a little time with you, answer any questions that you may have, and help you in any way that I can. Okay, so it's on to the question of the week. But before we do the question of the week, I want to announce that this Thursday evening, there will be no masterclass this Thursday evening. Now, Thursday is my birthday. That's right. Yeah, it's my birthday. So my wife said to me the other day, listen, you're going to have to take Thursday night off. So you make sure you let everybody know at Jazz Piano Skills, no masterclass. Now, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, wow, this is pretty cool. It's good, fancy dinner, lots of presents, cake, ice treats, all that good stuff. I'm fired up. I'm thinking this is going to be a great night. And then I find out that no, it's my daughter's 8th grade graduation. So my birthday's not even on the table. So I'm going to be attending my daughter's 8th grade graduation this Thursday evening. So no master class. And so we'll pick up with the master class and discussion regarding this episode the following week. Okay? All right. So now on to the question of the week. This week's question comes from Marty Van Blair, living in Munich, Germany. And Marty writes, I have been checking out your podcast episodes dealing with fingerings. You stress the importance of intentionally inserting hand shifts when practicing arpeggios. I'm intrigued by your approach because this has never been stressed to me in all of my years of lessons. I've always practiced playing arpeggios across the entire hand before moving up an octave and repeating the same arpeggio in fingerings. Can you take a few minutes in an upcoming episode to explain why the insertion of a hand shift is important and how you would suggest practicing hand shifts? Well, excellent question, Marty. And of course, I'm happy to explain my approach a little more. All right, so let's begin with scales. That's right. We're going to begin with scales. Now, I find it interesting that every major and every minor scale that you will ever practice, there is a hand shift actually already built into the fingering. For example, I think it's pretty universal to play the C major scale as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, and then the hand shifts 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Not thumb under, literally the hand shifts over. Now, that's a topic for another day, but thumb under, not so good, right? Tension. So you want to release and shift. But 1, 2, 3, hand shift, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, likewise, I think it's pretty standard to play the F major scale as 1, 2, 3, 4. Hand shift, 1, 2, 3. Right? So we can examine every major and every minor scale and find a hand shift already built into the fingering. Now, a scale, or a melodic sound, as I like to call it, consists of 7 notes. Now, I'm not counting the note an octave above the scale root. I'm not double counting that, right? So we have 7 notes in the scale. 7 notes played using stepwise motion with a built-in hand shift. Well, guess what? An arpeggio, like a scale, consists of 7 notes. The notes are just played using a skip motion, thirds, instead of a step motion, whole or half steps. So if a hand shift is needed to play 7 notes of a sound using step motion, then I think it is safe to say, and very logical to assume as well, that a hand shift would be needed to play the same 7 notes of a sound using skip motion. To prep you for this type of hand movement needed to play an arpeggio from the root to the 13th, right? That's all 7 notes, root to the 13th. We should begin incorporating this approach from the beginning when practicing a 4-note arpeggio, root to 7. So let's take a look at this using our C family of sounds: C major, C dominant, C minor, C half diminished, and C diminished. Okay, so with C major, 7, C, E, G, B, right? I would recommend playing that as, fingering that as 1, 3, 1, 3. Not 1, 2, 4, 5, playing across the hand, as you said, Marty. I would play 1, 3, 1, 3, because I'm prepping you to be able to play 1 to 13, okay? Now, the dominant would be played the same way. C, E, G, B flat, 1, 3, 1, 3. The minor, same way. C, E flat, G, B flat, 1, 3, 1, 3. And then the half diminished, I would recommend the exact same fingering. C, E flat, G flat, B flat, 1, 3, 1, 3. So you're going to have to move the hand inward on the keyboard, get the thumb up onto G flat to finish that arpeggio, 1, 3, 1, 3. And for the diminished, C, E flat, G flat, A, I would recommend practicing it as 1, 2, 4, 1. 1, 2, 4, 1. So we have this intentional shift. Now, the reason for that, as I've mentioned, I'm prepping you to be able to play the entire sound, all 7 notes, with a fingering that's going to allow you to play with a proper jazz articulation. So if we go back to that major, I'm going to play 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 4, all the way up to the 13. For the dominant, I'm going to play 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 4 again, all the way to 13. minor, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 4. For the half diminished, 1, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3. And for the diminished, I'm going to use 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3. Now, there is simply no way that I can play from the root to the 13th with the same cleanliness and the same articulation, playing the arpeggio across the entire hand and then skipping to the second octave and playing the same arpeggio again, right? So in other words, let's use C minor as example. If I'm trying to go 1, 2, 4, 5, and now shift from my fifth finger to my thumb on C an octave higher, it's going to be very awkward. Or let me do it with root to the 13th. So I'm going to go 1, 3, 5, 7. Now I'm going to shift my thumb to the note D, right, to try to finish out the arpeggio. Very clumsy. And I'm trying, right? I'm trying to play that very cleanly and very smoothly. Legato. Not happening, right? But now if I play with my intentional hand shifts in here, yeah, much cleaner, right? Much more accurate, much cleaner, and much more with a jazz articulation. So with the intentional hand shifts, I'm actually, it makes my job much easier to play all 7 notes of the arpeggio, just like all 7 notes of the scale has a hand shift. I want hand shifts taking place with all 7 notes of my arpeggio, ascending and, of course, descending. So I can honestly say that there's no way I could play the entire sound, the entire arpeggio, from the root to the 13th with a jazz articulation using a classical approach that you mentioned in your question, Marty. An approach where you play across the entire hand, in other words, before moving to the next octave and then repeating the same fingering. And honestly, I feel that it's clunky. It's a clunky approach that will not serve you well when trying to improvise. Okay? Now, I know it takes time to get used to my intentional hand shifting approach, especially if you're coming from a classical background, but I promise, give it a try, and you will feel and hear the difference in your playing. I guarantee it. Well, I hope this helps, Marty, and as always, if more clarification is needed, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with any questions that you may have, okay? All right, so let's discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Let's discover, learn, and play There Is No Greater Love, Part 3, an improvisation approach. 2 weeks ago, I presented my outline for studying and learning any tune. Well, I've actually presented the outline multiple times since the start of the year, right? And of course, the genre makes no difference. I don't care whether I'm trying to learn a jazz tune, a rock tune, a pop tune, R&B tune, country tune, folk tune, makes no difference, right? Number 1, I always listen. Number 2, I determine form. Number 3, I learn my chord changes and voicings. Number 4, I focus on the melody and developing various treatments of the tune. And then number 5, explore improvisation. That's it, right? 1, listen. 2, determine form. 3, learn chord changes and voicings. 4, learn the melody, various treatments. And 5, explore improvisation. That's it, right? Nothing more, nothing less. So 2 weeks ago, we focused on gaining a harmonic familiarity and command of There Is No Greater Love. So what did we do? We listened. We determined the form. We explored the chord changes, the harmonic function, common harmonic movement, and of course, voicings for There Is No Greater Love. And last week, we focused on an in-depth melodic analysis of There Is No Greater Love, looking at various guide tones, phrases, target notes, interpretation, fingerings, right? Very thorough. Our goal has been and will always be, right? To be organized, to keep things really clean and tidy with our study approach. And whether it's a scale study or a tune study, right? It makes no difference. Our conceptual understanding of all that we do musically must be structured, and honestly, it must be simple so that it can be replicated over and over and over again, just as we are doing with our tune study each and every month. And y'all can attest to the fact that I have said it many times over the past 4 years that if your conceptual understanding of music or a musical skill is not structured and simple, it is then unorganized and confusing. And if it's unorganized and confusing conceptually, right? Conceptually, then you have no shot. You have absolutely no shot at executing it in your hands on the piano. No way. So therefore, we always want to keep our tune study very structured, very simple, and, of course, replicatable. So the educational agenda for today is as follows. Number 1, we are going to begin part 3 to discover, learn, and play There Is No Greater Love using an improvisation approach. Number 2, we're going to listen, as always, we're going to listen to a recording of There Is No Greater Love. Number 3, we will discuss, as always, various zones, patterns, motifs. Number 4, we're going to unveil what I like to call musical boundaries, melodic boundaries, and extended boundaries to help us develop our improvisation skills. And number 5, I'll be playing all the demonstrations today at a tempo of 120 using a traditional easy swing groove. So, as always, we've got a ton to get done. So let's get after this. Now, if you are a Jazz Piano Skills member, I want you to take a few minutes right now, hit the pause button, and I want you to print your podcast packets, the illustrations, the lead sheets, and the play-alongs. Again, your membership grants you access to premium content for every weekly podcast episode, which of course includes all of the educational podcast packets. And I mention it to you every week that you should be using these podcast packets to get the most out of every podcast episode when listening. And of course, you should be using these wonderful materials when practicing as well. Now, if you are listening to the podcast on any of the popular podcast directories, such as Apple or Google, there's a million of them, right? Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, and so on. Then go directly to jazzpianoskillspodcast.com, and you'll find the active download links for each of the podcast packets in the show notes. Or you can just simply log into your Jazz Piano Skills account and from your dashboard navigate to this episode, where you will find one convenient link to download all 3 podcast packets in one convenient bundle. Okay, now that you have your podcast packets in front of you, I want you to grab your lead sheets, and you should have 6 lead sheets in your packet. I just want to walk you through these real quick. Lead sheet 1 provides you with what I call inverted arpeggios for the chord changes of There Is No Greater Love. Lead sheet 2 provides you with inverted scales for the chord changes for There Is No Greater Love, along with the chord scale relationships. Okay, so now lead sheet 3 provides you with, as always, ascending patterns and motifs, focusing on various target and tension notes for the chord changes of There Is No Greater Love. Lead sheet 4 provides you with descending patterns and motifs, again focusing on the various target and tension notes for There Is No Greater Love. Lead sheet 5 presents the melodic boundaries for There Is No Greater Love that will help us develop our improvisational skills. And lead sheet 6 extends those boundaries, those melodic boundaries for There Is No Greater Love. And again, these are all based on the inverted arpeggios and inverted scales presented in lead sheets 1 and 2. All right, so there's no question about it. Some invaluable tools to discover, learn, and play today. So let's get after this. What is the very first thing that we do? Right? We listen, of course, right? We did it last week. We're going to do it again today because we should always be doing it, always, right? And I stressed last week that listening to various renditions of a tune is not only the first, but I personally believe the most important step. Again, I can't even imagine begin learning a tune without spending a lot of time listening to the tune, becoming familiar with the tune, absorbing the tune by listening to various artists perform the tune. Now, I typically listen to vocal renditions first, followed by instrumentalist, and then followed by pianist. Again, you can listen to it in any order you want, but that's the order that I typically follow. The bottom line is I listen, and that's what we're going to do right now before we go any further. Now, 2 weeks ago, we checked out Dinah Washington singing There Is No Greater Love. Last week, we enjoyed a very hip vocal rendition of There Is No Greater Love performed by the University of North Texas jazz singers. And today, we're going to listen to the great Kenny Barron, one of my all-time favorite jazz pianists, performing There Is No Greater Love from his 1984 album titled Green Chimneys. Kenny is joined by Buster Williams on bass and Ben Riley on drums. So as always, grab your favorite beverage, and I want you to sit back and get ready to enjoy. Kenny Barron sounds fantastic. Check this out. thing I can say, right? Wow. And so tasteful. If you're not familiar with this album, Green Chimneys, I want to strongly encourage you to check it out. Every cut is fantastic. Softly as in a morning sunrise, Skylark, Straight Note Chaser, When Lights Are Low, right? To name just a few. I promise you, this will quickly become one of your favorite jazz albums. Okay, so now let's explore those lead sheets. We've done our listening. It's time to dig into the lead sheet. So grab lead sheet 1. Let's discover how to properly begin developing our improvisational skills using There Is No. Thank you for listening to Jazz Piano Skills. The remaining premium content of this episode is available to Jazz Piano Skills members at jazzpianoskillspodcast.com. Visit jazzpianoskills.com to learn more about membership privileges and become a Jazz Piano Skills member. Thank you.